Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us here on our annual post-budget event, the Budget Verdict. This is CNBC TV 18's effort to try and get the budget makers, the budget architects to interact with industry in their very first interaction post-delivering the union budget. It is my honor and privilege to invite on stage the Revenue Secretary, Sanjay Malhotra, to please join us here for the Budget Verdict. Mr. Malhotra, thank you very much for joining us. The number one question, and I think this is something that came up periodically through the conversations that we had. One, of course, as far as tax collections are concerned, the government has been able to over-deliver on the estimates that were put forward in the budget last year. But the larger issue and the larger question that people are posing at this point in time is why this conservatism as far as tax collections are concerned, and when can we actually expect the government to do better, especially in the context of a higher tax to GDP ratio?
No, I'm surprised. I would like to dispel the notion insofar as the budget estimates for the next year are concerned. Let me assure all of you that the numbers that we have put forth are very much in line with the GDP numbers. So the GDP is estimated from a budget perspective to grow nominally at 10.5%. And you yourself mentioned that our tax to GDP ratio has been constant.
Yeah.
And so is it not realistic to assume that the tax to GDP ratio will not change dramatically and remain the same? And so in line with that, the revenue projections for this next year are also at 10.5%. They are very much realistic. You are aware that these depend primarily on three things. One, the GDP, how the GDP does. If it does better, then then the tax revenues should also be more. And if it doesn't do as well, then it will be lower. The second thing it depends is on the rates. And we haven't factored in, I may tell all of you, we have not factored in the relief that we have given, of about 37,000 crore on the direct taxes side. Indirect taxes is, of course, very less. But I would like to inform all of you that when we did the budget estimates for next year, the relief on the personal income tax has not been yet factored in. So in fact, if anything, it's an overestimate. Thirdly, it depends on collection efficiency, and that's what gives the buoyancy, right? Either through the tax rate or through the collection efficiency. So we have assumed, right now we have assumed 100%, But yes, we have done well in this year, particularly we have done well this year. And there are a number of areas where we have tried to plug loopholes to broaden the tax base, to deepen the tax base. And so yes, there is some room, but let's see, from a budget perspective, I think it's a realistic estimate. It's certainly not a conservative estimate.
Now, there has been a long pending demand on rate rationalization as far as GST is concerned. That's not a budget item, but it is going to be something that perhaps the government will now look at the budget exercise being over and done with. On this issue as far as what is the GST rate and what the real revenue neutral rate is and how the two shall meet, what is the way forward?
No, so that's an interesting question, but let me tell you that the revenue neutral, let me remind all of us here that when GST was being implemented, at that time the revenue neutral rate was thought to be about 15.4%. Yes. But actual practice experience tells us that in practice over the last 65 months, we have data for 65 months since it was implemented, and the actual effective rate has only been about 11.5%, so which means 3.9% lower. And despite that, you have seen that there is good buoyancy. We have done better insofar as GST is concerned. We have done better than the growth rates in GDP over there.
Joining me now on stage is the DPAM Secretary, Tuhin Kanta Pandey. Mr. Pandey, many thanks for joining us here on CNBC TV 18. Before I get to you about next year's target and next year's aspiration, let's talk about this financial year. How do you intend to close the gap?
This financial year, we have a target of about 1.0 lakh crore, 1.05 lakh crore if you count disinvestment as well as the dividend from CPSEs. And we have done about 68,000 crore yet, about 60, I mean, close to 70%, about 70%. And, usually on the dividend side, we have been exceeding. In the last year, we had a dividend target of 46,000 crore and we ended up with 59,000 crore. Because we had certain, headwinds this year. But nevertheless, I think we would do it better than our target there. And on disinvestment, we will continue our, we will continue to strive to meet the target within the market conditions that we get in next 2 months.
You're smiling while you're saying that you'll continue to strive to meet the target, but what could you depend on? Could you depend on the likes of Hindustan Zinc, for instance, to be able to close the gap on the disinvestment side? Dividend, I understand, and you pointed that out quite eloquently, that you've been able to exceed, but on disinvestment, that's where the problem is. So could a Hindustan Zinc-like option come to the rescue to close the gap?
Well, I don't think that we really specifically, at least in those cases where we do minority stake sale, we really don't reveal the names and the numbers. And you know that certain SEBI norms are there, certain things are there where we don't, this thing is there. But certainly we had two pillars. One is the minority stake sale, and the other one is the privatization, where we do what we call also strategic disinvestment. And put together, we have to look at different conditions and different stocks and look at, particularly looking into the interest of the minority shareholders and then act accordingly.
And for the benefit of this audience also, let's understand, because so much was made about disinvestment, strategic disinvestment, privatization. What should we now expect as the run rate to really realistically be?
I think let me also tell that, these last 3 years is precisely the years when we had major issues just after the budget announcements. We have, for the first year, we had COVID. And the second year, we had, the Delta wave. And then third, we had Omicron and Ukraine crisis and the Fed and the others where, the sentiment of markets completely changed. We had also some of those big ticket disinvestments, for example, BPCL, where we proceeded well, but in between they were caught up in the energy transition issues, also the transition of geopolitical issues on fuel. And then obviously the bidders didn't want to proceed further, and we had to call off that EOI.
It's time for me to welcome to our cast of stars here on stage, the Chief Economic Advisor, Anantha Nageshwaran. Mr. Nageshwaran, if you could join us here on stage, please. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for the Chief Economic Advisor, Anantha Nageshwaran. Mr. Nageshwaran, many thanks for joining us. Before I talk to you about the domestic factors, let's talk about the changes that have happened overnight globally. And let me begin by asking you about what you make of the commentary that's come in from the Fed Chief Jerome Powell, stating that perhaps the first signs of a disinflationary environment. How comfortable does that make you feel, especially in light of the global uncertainties that we are faced with?
Of course, did mention the fact that temporarily, or at least for now, inflation pressures have eased. But he also mentioned that they are very determined to reach their 2% target, and they are committed to further rate increases. But the financial markets took a different view of his press conference. So that is what bothers me, because financial markets, having been conditioned over 2 to 3 decades in a different manner, or are refusing to believe that this Fed would want to see the inflation rate come down even further and would be poised to tighten. So the more they kind of engage in this eyeball-to-eyeball confrontation with the Fed and expects the Fed to blink first, and if the Fed doesn't, then the amount of rate hikes that will be required will become even more than what would be the case otherwise. That is what bothers me from the emerging market and the Indian angle.
And which is why you talked about entrenched inflation and the possibility of a longer tightening cycle as well in the economic survey. But that's one of the global factors. The other global factor that I want you to comment on, and I don't think that we've discussed that enough, especially since we've been poring over the budget, is the impact of what's happening in China. The reopening, bouncing back as far as manufacturing is concerned, the PMI in China coming back to about 50, under that is of course contraction. The implications of China reopening in the way that it has on the global economy and what it eventually will mean for India as well.
So obviously, given the size of Chinese economy, whatever happens there will have a global impact, whether it's a slowdown or an expansion. And to the extent that if the recovery happens to be smoother, then definitely it would have it would impart an upward pressure on commodity prices. Including it will create a higher demand for crude oil. So therefore, we have to factor that into our calculations going forward in 23-24. So the speed with which Chinese economy returns to normal and the magnitude of the bounce from last year's growth rates will definitely have a material impact from the point of view of global inflation and from the point of view of commodity prices. So in fact, it could even prolong the monetary tightening cycle in the Western advanced economies. So that is something we need to watch.
Let me also take the opportunity to welcome on stage the Economic Affairs Secretary, Ajay Sheth. Mr. Sheth, could we have you join us on stage, please, as we take a question here from Rahul. A big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for the Economic Affairs Secretary. Go ahead, Rahul.
So I'm saying that what is the tax the economy of our size, economy of our kind should generate versus what's the tax that we actually collect? Is that reasonably converging, or is there a big gap or a small gap? How much is that gap, and what's the trend over the years on that gap?
Okay. If we can give an overall number, what we are collecting as an economy, I'm talking about center and states put together, is roughly about 17 to 18% of GDP is our tax effort. Certainly, it is on a rural size. If you look at just about the BRICS countries, only China has of this order. All other three countries have a much higher. And of course, advanced economies have 25% plus. And China is a different, much more controlled economy, or rather is a controlled economy. So we have to move to the path wherein first from 17, 18% we reach to 20% before we think of where we move further. And in the last couple of years, if we discount what happened during the pandemic, inching up like last year, getting 11% plus centers alone, tax to GDP ratio is a positive sign. And more automation, GST and direct tax simplification is moving to that direction. So yes, approach is more ratio, more people into the tax net, a moderate tax rate, that's the general approach.
But if you could explain the thinking and the rationale behind what we've seen happen specifically as far as the rural budget is concerned and why the decline?
It will not be a correct statement to say the rural budget has come down. Of one particular scheme is the MNRAGS, that allocation has come down, but that scheme is demand driven. People come for a wage employment because they don't have any other employment opportunity. And as we are seeing it, the economy is picking up, especially the services sector. There is a pull factor from urban areas, people migrating back to the urban areas, and they are getting the job opportunities there. But an equally important, what the fiscal is trying to do for rural housing, budget has gone up from 20,000 crore to close to 55,000 crore, 54,400 and plus crores. So increase of 170%. Who are the people who are going to construct? Machines are not going to construct. Those houses will be constructed by human beings. So there will be a job demand will be coming in. Similar manner for drinking water, rural drinking water, budget has gone up from 60,000 to 70,000. Of course, part of it will be material, but a significant part will as well be material, because that all has to be embedded below the earth. So these two significant increases which generates job or wage employment in the rural area more than compensate for what has been the reduction in terms of NNRGS, but that is based on assessment that demand for wage employment will be less in the coming year.
Gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much to the DPAM Secretary, to the Chief Economic Advisor, as well as to the Economic Affairs Secretary for joining us here on the CNBC TV 18 Budget Verdict. We appreciate your time, and thank you very much for joining us here with your insights. Welcome back. You're watching the CNBC TV 18 Budget Verdict, and it is my pleasure now to invite on stage the Road and Highways Minister, Mr. Nitin Gadkari. Sir, could you please join us on stage? Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for Minister Nitin Gadkari. This has been a Capex-heavy budget, a budget where the government continues to do the heavy lifting as far as public investment is concerned and infrastructure. A big outlay for your ministries as well, almost 2.6 lakh crore rupees being allocated. Let me start by asking you about how you intend to spend all of that money.
Actually, frankly speaking, this is really a great thing for that the government has given highest priority for the development of road infrastructure in the country. Under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi ji, our dream is to make Indian road infrastructure equivalent to USA standard before end of 24. And that's the reason that because of new Green Express Highway, whatever the new highway we are making from Delhi, Mumbai, Chennai, Bangalore, even a lot of projects are now with us. I feel that this is going to helpful for me for making more expenditure on road construction. I am very much confident about it that in due course of time, within 5 years, our automobile industry's presently size of 7.5 lakh crore, we want to make it double of 15 lakh crore. This is the industry which is giving 4.5 crore jobs and giving maximum revenue as a form of GST to the central and state government. So totally this government is going to increase our GDP growth, creating more employment potential, and it's going to increase our export and reduce our import.
So, Mr. Gadkari, I know that you give all your officers across ministries targets. So I'm going to ask you, sir, what is the target that you've now set of how much they have to build every day?
Presently, we are 40 kilometers per day. And now every year we are giving contracts, awarding contracts of 13 to 14,000 kilometers. But now we will taking this target going up to 24,000 kilometers for awarding contracts. Presently, we are making new road between Delhi to Dehradun within 2 hours, Delhi to Haridwar in 2 hours, Delhi to Jaipur, just at the 12, Prime Minister is going to inaugurate that project. It will be 2 hours. Then Delhi to Chandigarh, 2.5 hours, Delhi to Amritsar, 4 hours, Delhi to Katra, 6 hours, Delhi to Srinagar, 8 hours, Bangalore to Chennai, 2 hours, and Bangalore to Mysore, 1 hour. So the way in which we are making the road, so people will not use air.
And one of the big focus areas of the government has been the green growth aspect. Within that, the electric mobility cause is something that you and your ministry have been championing. So what should we expect now? Do you believe that the era of subsidies needs to continue? So which means that FAME should get an extension. The FAME scheme of subsidies should get an extension.
Actually, this green subject is very much touching to my heart. From 2004, I am working like a mission on alternative fuel. Ethanol, methanol, biodiesel, bio-LNG, bio-CNG, electric and hydrogen. So today, it is really, I am very much happy about the finance minister's speech about green building, green fuel, green energy. And this is really going to change the scenario of the country. Actually, we have the import of the fossil fuel of 17 lakh crores. There is a huge potential is available. I remember many times you have already taken my interview. The people were asking me about the electric car, electric scooters. Now today there is a waiting list. So even hydrogen mission, there is a provision for 19,000 crore. And now the hydrogen from coal is black hydrogen. Hydrogen from petroleum, that is the brown hydrogen. And green hydrogen, that is from water and biomass. So my actually mission is to make our farmers, presently they are Annadata. My dream is to make them Urjadata. Now in Ahmedabad, we are making express highway, Dolaro, Ahmedabad something, where we are using 20 lakh ton of municipal solid waste in the construction. Now we are making the policy for using of municipal solid waste into road construction. Then we are using the waste tire, where we get the rubber powder. And the rate of that powder is 25 to 30 rupees per kg, and bitumen rate is 50 rupees. So adding 15% rubberized into that powder into the bitumen, the quality of bitumen is going to be It should be good quality. And now this type of recycling industry, either it is scrapping, either it is you are using plastic, or we are using solid waste everywhere in the road construction, it can be a great thing. And this recycling of the industry is going to create more employment potential, and it is going to helpful for the growth of our economy. So I feel that now this is the time that the cost is reduced. That's the reason I feel that for economic viability, that now they don't need subsidy. It can be economically viable.
You know, I want to talk about this toll collection number or target that you have laid out, 1,40,000 crores.
Actually, in our this FASTag, we have the success story is now 98.5% the income which we are getting from the FASTag. So we need to reduce our leakages there. And by automatic number plate linked with the satellite, which within 3 months we are going to launch that system, I am 100% confident that there will be no leakage, and our toll income is now very good. There is no problem for that.
You know, you said that money is not a constraint for you. What are the big challenges? What are the big constraints that could hold back the utilization of the allocation?
Actually, frankly speaking, the most important thing that without land acquisition, how we can going to construct the road? And land acquisition is related with the state government. Then the second problem is environment and forest clearance from state government and central government. Third is the basic problem is judicial problem. When anywhere we start the work, some court has given the stay and we cannot work. But we are resolving. I always telling to my people that there are some people who convert problems into opportunities, and there are some people who convert opportunities into the problem. So there is no problem now. We can resolve the problem. We have good coordination, cooperation, and communication between the state government and central government. I always meeting with the chief minister, talking to the chief secretaries, taking the meeting for that. So everywhere in the Assam, I am telling you, there was some problem. But the initiative taken by the Assam chief minister, and actually now there is no problem. In the northeast, you go there and visit, see the road development. Everywhere the work is going on. You go to Jammu and Kashmir, we are making already road tunnels and roads of 1 lakh crore. We are making big tunnels there. You can see. There are problems, but it is really important for the department and for my officers that we need to resolve that issue, and that is exactly the important test for all of us, and we have to do it. Actually, my priority in my department is road safety. And that is the only subject my track record is not good. Every year we have 5 lakhs accidents, 1,50,000 deaths. And the death of the people, the age is 18 to 34, 60% young people. Actually, this is very painful. I am trying my level best. We are taking a lot of things for that. And the other important thing is the pollution on highway. Now the scrapping. This is very important for the economy. The 9 lakh vehicles from the central government, and let's say 30 to 35 lakhs from the state government, the finance minister declared the scheme. This 50 lakhs vehicle, if the scrapping is there, they are going to purchase new vehicle. Again, the GST, the state government, central government, again they will get it from that. And because of scrapping, we can reduce the cost of automobile components by 30%. We are importing aluminum, copper, plastic, rubber, everything. Because of recycling of this material, we will reduce the cost. And today, we are number 3rd as automobile industry is concerned in the world. My target is within 3 years, up to end of 24, we will cross at least 2 lakh crore more. And after 5 years, we will be 15 lakh crore of the industry of automobile. All reputed automobile brands in the world. All are present in India, and that is to be most important thing, that by reducing the cost, our export will be increased and to create more employment potential in the country, and that is to be a great achievement for the government.
Mr. Gadkari, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very, very much for joining us here at the budget verdict. You're watching the CNBC TV 18 budget verdict. It is now time for the grand finale. Joining us here on the budget verdict stage, we have a power-packed lineup of the budget makers as well as key policy makers. Please join me in welcoming the CEO of the Niti Aayog, Parameshwaran Iyer. Ms. Iyer, could we have you join us on stage, please? Also with us, the chairman of the CBDT, Mr. Nitin Gupta. Mr. Gupta, could we have you join us on stage? The chairman of the CBIC, Mr. Vivek Johri, also here with us on the CNBC TV 18 budget verdict. Also with us, the DPIIT Secretary, Mr. Anurag Jain. Mr. Jain, could we have you join us on stage as well? And the MNRE Secretary, Mr. Bhupinder Singh Bhalla. Gentlemen, thank you very, very much for joining us here at the CNBC TV 18 budget verdict. Appreciate your time and thank you for being here with us in the concluding session of the CNBC TV 18 budget verdict. Mr. Iyer, let me start by talking to you, and the microphone is right next to you, sir. You know, when we last spoke, you said that you believe that this is a bottom-up budget. It's a budget that has delivered on the aspirations of every constituency across the country. What, to your mind, has been the biggest force multiplier as far as the budget announcements are concerned?
Well, I think there are a couple of things, Shireen. One, of course, is the huge investment in Capex, you know, that huge increase of 10 lakh crores. In addition to that, the continuation for another year of the 50-year interest-free loan to states. So extending that and actually incentivizing the states as well to come in with their own Capex and attracting private investment. I think those are going to be key. But then if you know, that's going to have huge positive spin-offs in terms of jobs, employment, etc. But the other part of the budget, which I think is equally important, is the thrust on the social sector. And that's pretty much where Niti Aayog is working with states under the State Support Mission, which was referenced by the Finance Minister yesterday, of taking development right down to the grassroots level. How can states create their own state institutes of transformation like Niti? How can they move from planning to development strategy and really take it down to the block level? And perhaps one of the most significant features of the budget was the focus on inclusion, the particularly vulnerable tribal groups, PVTG. So this new mission which has been announced is actually for the tribal community, the bottom rung of the tribal community, 15,000 crores, 3-year in mission mode to give them, provide basic services. I think that was a very, very significant announcement of inclusion.
Mr. Jain, let me come to you because, you know, as I said, a large thrust on ease of doing business, reducing compliance, as well as encouraging private sector participation across a whole host of industries. I wanted to get your comments and your assessment on where things stand as far as a couple of government schemes are concerned. PLI, various schemes across 13 sectors in various, various forms of rollout at this point in time. Which are the ones that you feel satisfied with, where the progress you feel satisfied with? Where do you believe there is distance to be covered and work is underway to ensure that you push things along? Let me start by asking you about PLI before I get to Gati Shakti.
PLI, as you know, is one of the most important schemes for giving thrust to and creating global champions. The way we look at it, the sectors which we selected were basically based on whether there is a potential for a particular sector to create global champions in the country, whether this particular sector is of a strategic importance to the nation, or whether does it have a very high employment generation potential. So these are the 3 tests on which we actually consider a particular sector. But you'll have to understand the way PLI scheme operates. If in year 1, I give a particular approval to a particular company, it has to make investments.
Yes.
Investment cycle takes time. So typically in most of the schemes, the investment period granted is 1 year or 2 years, depending on the choice of the company which wants to take the benefit of the PLI. So suppose it takes 1 year benefit. It wants to complete the investment in 1 year. So in the year 2, it will make the investment. Year 3 will be the base year of production.
Okay.
So year 4 will be the claim. So what has happened, some of the news items said that only 15% of the investment has taken place, only 3-4% of the money has been claimed. So let me put it straight. What has happened in most of these schemes, the investment is supposed to be completed over a period of 4 to 5 years. Say typically in a scheme, I say 15% of investment is the benchmark for year 1, 35% is year 2, 65% is year 3, 100% is year 4. So at the end of first year, how much would be the investment? 15%. If you put 15 in the denominator, it will be 100% performance. And if you put 100 in the denominator, it will be a 15% performance. So in the first year, the actual performance, if you put in the denominator, the target for the first year, it was 106%.
Okay.
Okay. Similarly, on the claims. So the schemes have actually started in different periods of time.
Yes.
So this year, we expect by March that out of 14 schemes, 7 would have got their first claims, especially which were the early birds would make larger claims. So most of the schemes are by and large, there are certain minor hiccups which are there in implementation of any scheme. So concerned departments are continuously hand-holding all these investors, and I hope that, I mean, the way CEO Diti and I, we normally coordinate and review at our level, and then there's an empowered committee which is chaired by the cabinet secretary, that also reviews. Invariably, it's only minor hiccups, no major hiccups.
Ms. Iyer, let me get you to comment on that as well. Minor hiccups, no major hiccups. And thank you again, Mr. Jain, for explaining how the PLI scheme, the incentives and the claims work, because often that's not understood. And he's absolutely right in pointing out that there have been different rollout timelines across different schemes. We started with pharmaceuticals, and of course that was the very first PLI scheme to be rolled out. And then of course there was the COVID uncertainty as well. But in your assessment, what has been the biggest factors that are working as far as these 14 schemes are concerned?
I think first of all, Shireen, like Anurag said, I think the first factor is the selection of these 14 sectors. That itself has been very significant. And then of course, it's the industries coming forward, the very close monitoring, and I think the hand-holding and the facilitation for the industries, coordination with the state governments, getting the land acquisition, the electricity, the water up and running, and we do a very close monitoring. And so already about 800 crores, 800 worth of incentives have already been approved. We expect 3,000 to 4,000 crores before the end of March. And of course, the earlier sectors, pharma, mobiles, they're moving quicker. And I think others are learning from that process. So it's well underway, and we're very optimistic about how this program is going to transfer made in India and manufacturing in strategic sectors in India.
You know, one of the...
Sir, may I just
yes, please, sir.
Two things. Sir, what happens is the simplicity of the scheme is very important. The claim is dependent only on the production and nothing else. So that is very easy to verify with the GST, tax registrations, etc. So there are no administrative complexities involved in passing the claims. That is one of the biggest and important factors to my mind.
And you're absolutely right. That is a big factor, and certainly a big factor as far as industry is concerned. But Mr. Bhalla, let me come to you. One of the areas identified as a priority area has been the energy transition. This has been a budget that has identified the green focus, and an allocation of 35,000 crores, if my memory serves me right, has been made for the energy transition to OMCs, etc. You know, I want to understand from you, there's been a significant distance that's already been covered, especially when we talk about renewable energy. How confident are you feeling at this point in time as the world also makes this shift about India's own goals and aspirations?
Yeah, as you know, India has set a target of meeting 50% of its installed capacity, electricity installed capacity by non-fossil fuels by 2030. We have, right now we are at around 42%. Of the installed capacity, of the current installed capacity. Of course, looking at what our target is of how the energy would grow, we expect that we will need to add about 200 gigawatts or something of that sort of renewable capacity in the next 7 years. So it will be a spread of solar, wind, hydel, and bioenergy, and so on and so forth. Our expectation is, and what we are moving very confidently towards is, over the next 7 years, we will achieve 500 gigawatt. In fact, while we have committed, internationally committed to install 50% of our installed capacity from non-fossil. But Prime Minister has set a target of 500 gigawatt. So that's what we are aiming at, and we are very confident of achieving it.
What is the constraint or the challenge that you believe you're faced with in being able to get to that target? Mr. Gadkari was here and he said, capital for me is not a problem. I have enough and more of it. How much of a factor is capital, and what are some of the other constraints that could get in the way of you being able to get to the 500 gigawatt target?
See, if you do the numbers, I mean, we have estimated that we will need about 23 lakh crore of investment in renewables for the next 7 years to reach the target. And of course, part of it would come from equity, part of it would come from, the balance would come from a combination of debt instruments as well as bond market. Equity, we are very confident that the private sector would be able to achieve. As you know, we are actually the expansion of renewable capacity in the country has been spearheaded by the private sector. And the systems have been set are so robust, and there's so much of excitement when the new bids are invited that I think there's no dearth of investments. In fact, a lot of international investment funding is coming in into the sector. So they will be, of course, financing will be one of the criteria one of the factors which would lead us to reach it, but it would not be a constraint as far as we are concerned. Second is whether do we have the capacity to produce enough solar and wind equipment in the country. As you know, you've seen the last year what supply chain issues we faced, the prices which rocketed, not only in other sectors but also in renewables. But with, as Anurag just mentioned, the PLI scheme, for example, for solar, we have already done PLI 1, which we've already awarded it an integrated capacity of about 8.7 gigawatt of from polysilicon to solar module is what was awarded in PLI 1. As was mentioned, our capacity, in fact, I reviewed it today with the companies who were awarded, and it's absolutely on track. And with December 24, which is the 3-year timeline for our PLI, in fact, before that, we will have a fully integrated capacity of polysilicon to module produced in India as far as solar is concerned. And PLI 2 is now, we've called for bids. The bids are about to close, and that will add significant capacity to our solar manufacturing in India. In fact, looking at the numbers and looking at how these companies are actually adding capacity over and above what they have actually won or whatever they plan to, bid for in the PLI 2, they are setting up very high giga capacity factories. We will be producing enough solar manufacturing in India after about 3 years. It takes about 3 years for it to roll out. By year 2026, we are expecting that we will be producing enough solar manufacturing in India to not only cater to our requirement, but also to export.
Mr. Jain and Mr. Iyer, you were both in Davos trying to talk to investors about the potential of the India growth story. And let me start by asking you, Mr. Jain, in light of all of the measures that have been taken, what was the feedback that you got about India's competitiveness, specifically from a manufacturing standpoint? Is there anything more tangible, specific steps that investors have put on the table that the government is working on?
I think this will be a pretty longish answer if you can, but...
Is that a long list of demands that has been made?
No demands, the kind of work which has been done. So first and foremost, I would say the kind of structural reforms which have happened, the policy governance reforms which have happened, add on that the rule of law which we have in our country, add on to that demographic dividend, add on to that the best part, talented youth of the country. So this is what is going to drive the India's growth for next 25-30 years. The startup story we all know. So all this growth will be driven by, to our mind, knowledge, innovation, and sustainability. And our startup ecosystem is doing fantastically well on all these. They are providing frugal and innovative solutions to all these problems. So if you are solving a problem for India's scale, you are actually solving global problems. Next 4 billion people in the world, they are looking to those solutions. Like India's public digital infrastructure. That's marvelous. I don't need to get into this. That is something which is absolutely unique. Nowhere else in the world you have something similar. We have based all our systems on presence-less, cashless, paperless kind of systems. Plus, it is based on open source, open platforms, open network. So what happens, any new startup or any new person who wants to start his business, he can plug into this existing ecosystem. Rest of the ecosystem is provided by the existing system. So therefore, the entry barriers have been lowered substantially, and that is what is fueling the growth. So this is one aspect. The kind of solutions, when you are talking to Secretary MNRE, next important thing which is going to happen, there are companies in India which started as a startup, now they have really grown big, unicorns. The cost of 24/7 energy based on renewable energy, can you guess? 6 cents.
Wow.
This will excite the whole world. They have come out with designs. They are taking the renewable energy, solar, wind, everything, and using the pump storage with their improved efficiency design, which gives 81% efficiency. And they are giving firm power for 24/7. The real problem with renewable energy is this, that it is available only at certain time of the day. So they are spreading the risk by putting the solar and wind both. Wind comes in generally in the night, solar comes generally in the day, plus the storage. So even it out. So these are kind of solutions which are coming. You talk of anything, what India's startup ecosystem or young entrepreneurs are doing, it is pretty exciting. So it is a technological revolution which is happening in India. So most of the people are looking towards India as the real next place to invest in. I mean, you would have heard the stories from IMF that as the brightest. So
bright spot, yes.
So all those things are happening. So most of the people were excited in Davos. They were looking up to India to invest. And when we ask, there are very, very minor issues like FDI policy. India is one of the most open economies. The list where you cannot invest is not there, where you need government permission or you cannot invest 100%. That is just less than a page. So I can tell you with confidence that India's FDI policy is one of the most open FDI policies.
You know, you spoke a lot about startups, sir, and this is a subject close to my heart. I've been tracking it for 22 years now. So one of the big asks from the startup ecosystem is this business of linking the certification by the DPIIT that clears you to actually be qualified as a startup and then avail of the kind of benefits that the government is willing to put on the table. That process is taking very long. There are very few certified startups. When can we see that change?
That we have tried to improve the process. Earlier there was one committee which was taking it. So till about 3 months back, there are two major advantages which they are looking for. There are 3 levels of certification. First level of certification is that you just file and it's automatical, you get it automatically. So there are about 88,000 startups which have been registered. So there's no problem in that. Second registration is for angel tax, 56(2). There was some news items today that that has been done away. People are nervous about it.
No, it's just been parity. The non-residents have been brought.
No. The problem came from somewhere. So therefore, I would like to make that clear also on this count, that there is no change as far as startups are concerned. Anyone which has got a recognition of DPIIT for investing into that particular startup, the exemption under 56(2) continues.
Correct.
So that is there. So under that, more than 7,000 have got registered. There's absolutely no issue for 56(2). So first registration, which gives you benefits like GEM, startup, exemption from experience, net worth, turnover criteria for participating in government tenders, that's available to everybody. This 7,000, I am sure there is absolutely no hiccup. When you apply, you get it automatically. So it is only that the rest of the people have not gone to that stage where they want angel investors to come in or whatever. The last one, which was for 80 IAC.
Yeah.
So by very nature also, 80 IAC is something which not many people apply because they have to grow big before they apply.
Right.
But still our process was slow, and that was a complaint. Against about 2,500 applications, only 400 odd had been cleared. So what we did, we have now created 10 parallel boards to improve the speed. So in the matter of last 2 months, the approvals have gone up from 400 odd to about 1,200. And hopefully by March or April, we would finish the 100% pendency because we have multiplied our force by 10 times.
10 times, well.
And by taking the benefit of the experts in the ecosystem.
Right.
So we have divided the work into 2 parts. One, people who look at the innovation part, one who look at the genuineness of the company. Both the inputs come, our committee automatically approves it.
Well, that's good news, and that certainly is going to be relief to many who are waiting for that clearance. But Mr. Iyer, you know, the sectors that you believe at this point in time are poised to be able to attract foreign capital specifically. Of course, the hope is domestic capital will start to flow in as well. But really, from a manufacturing standpoint, in the conversations that you had, where do you believe we're likely to be able to draw in the investment?
Well, Shireen, as I think Anurag has stolen most of my thunder on Davos. He's already said whatever needs to be said. But in the many private conversations which I had and all of us had, there's huge excitement about investing in India. And, you know, the sectors are the sunrise sectors, but in particular in the digital space, in green energy, there's huge enthusiasm. And I think for a couple of reasons. One is India's credibility in terms of delivering large projects at scale on time. So I think this government has got a phenomenal track record of delivery on the ground. And whether you look at infrastructure, you look at the 70,000 kilometers of road, the numbers are very big. And that was hugely impressive for many people who hadn't really understood the delivery at scale. 400 million bank accounts. You look at 2 billion vaccinations. And the ability to do this with quality and on time, I think that was very, very impressive, and that resonates. But the sectors are the usual. In addition to that, on the energy front, you know, our record in terms of our NDCs, we are actually walking the talk on our climate commitments, unlike many other countries in the world. And I remember that discussion you moderated on looking at the whole, moving from looking at the adaptation.
Mitigation to adaptation,
exactly,
yes.
Mitigation to adaptation, which was put on the table at Sharm el-Sheikh. So again, on that front as well, I think there's a lot of confidence that, particularly now with India hosting the G20 presidency, the importance of putting these issues on the table, the ability for India to lead the global south, these were all issues which really resonated. In particular, what really excited them was the sort of alternate climate agenda put forward by the Prime Minister on lifestyle for the environment, of how India can lead the world in walking the talk on climate.
Mr. Jain, you know, the expectation was that we would hear from the Finance Minister about the progress of the Gati Shakti program in the budget, but that wasn't the case. So let me address that issue with you on where things currently stand as far as the Gati Shakti plan is concerned, what you've been able to do in terms of speeding out infrastructure development, cost savings, time savings as well.
I think the budget was Gati Shakti budget. What is PM Gati Shakti? PM Gati Shakti is basically improving the infrastructure for logistic efficiency. So the allocation going up to 10 lakh crore, I mean, sir has already spoken, so I will not repeat all that. So that is what is the focus on infrastructure. What is PM Gati Shakti? PM Gati Shakti is way of operationalizing your schemes in a manner which is whole of government approach, sharing of data using technology, designing, I mean its planning and decision making being much faster, much better in quality. That is what is PM Gati Shakti. So what we have done on PM Gati Shakti platform, we have 1600 GIS layers. which have all kinds of things. You have a 3D visibility of the earth, you have visibility of existing infrastructure, the road, rail, the water canals, the gas pipelines, the telecom lines, etc., whatever infrastructure. You have layers for forest, the mining leases which have been granted. You have GIS layers for the geological wealth which is underneath. So while you are planning your alignments for the infrastructure, you can make an optimized decision making. Like there have been examples where by realigning the project, the need for an forest clearance has been done away. So your project gets advanced by about 1 to 2 years. That's one part. Second important part in PM Gati Shakti framework is that we are putting the revenue layers also. All the states have been requested, about 12 states have already done it. Rest of the states are in the process of putting their revenue maps. So where the revenue maps are available. Say for example, I'll quote one. The road from Pune to Bangalore was being planned. So it passes through 30 different tehsils. So 30 tehsils means to create a land acquisition case, you have to go to different 30 tehsils if you go work the traditional way. Each case has to be made village-wise, so you finalize your alignment, you put on the map, find out who is the owner, and then come out. So it typically takes about 6 months to 1 year just to prepare the land acquisition case. Now, because the revenue maps are superimposed, actually it is a matter of hours that the output comes out. The case is prepared village-wise, name of the person, how much land, how much price it would, cost it would be for land acquisition, and the officer has to just sign it. So you gain in the DPR formulation, instead of 6 months to 1 year, it comes out in 2 months, 3 months. In case of land acquisition, instead of 6 months to 1 year, it comes out in matter of hours. So you are expediting, and the decision making is better. As I explained, you can avoid clearances.
Mr. Gupta, Mr. Iyer, Mr. Jain, Mr. Johri and Mr. Bhalla, what an absolute pleasure it has been. Thank you very, very much for joining us here on the Budget Verdict. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for our guests here who've joined us to explain the priorities and the roadmap for the government going forward.